Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 45 of Instigate Success Building an ABA Franchise. I am your host, Jake Schoen. I'll be here again for all your AAC news, the Apex Athletic Collective, and the Hoosier State Instigators. We are still in the off season for a little bit longer for the Instigators, but we did have some news this week, which we have been talking about leading up to in the past couple of podcasts. And we'll go over that as well as covering some stuff. It's coming up soon. So we've mentioned this a few times already. We are still looking for a coach, as far as I'm aware. And if you or anybody you know would be interested in coaching a professional basketball team, we would love to talk about that more in detail. And they can send their information at that website right there. Our website is apexofsports.com. And that direct link, if you do the /contact-8, after that, that'll get you to a link on that page where you can fill out a form to give us some of your contact information if you are either a coach or a player that would be interested in joining the Hoosier State Instigators. But we are looking for another coach. Again, I had mentioned this a few times in the past already. Our coach from last season, he's also a founder and owner. Corey Kern will not be returning as the head coach for the team. So we are actively looking for another coach going into the second season. But I'm excited to see what we can do if we can get a coach and have some more time with the team going into the second season of the ABA. I think that's going to be a lot more beneficial. We're definitely going to have the players have a lot more playing time together, kind of gel as a whole unit going into this second season. So I do think we are definitely on a better track than last year, but we are still looking for a coach at this point. And along with that is the news that we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. We'll see if we have anybody else join here that has a little bit more information regarding our tryouts from this past weekend. May 18th, this past Saturday, we hosted our first tryouts of the second season for the Hoosier State Instigators. We will, I believe, have another tryout that we have scheduled. It'll be sometime over the summer, and that one should be around where we're planning on playing this year. Um, this one on Saturday, this past Saturday, was at the Crossroads Community Church in Bedford, Indiana. Again, that is the facility where we had played a few times last year in our inaugural season. We had the exhibition game against the Shuckers, and we did this in conjunction with the IBL, and the IBL is also joining the ABA this year. So they also got to scout some of the talent and see if they would be joining their team going to the ABA as well. So it's a good opportunity for both of us to have first look at some of the talent that would be interested in joining professionally this upcoming season. But we did play against the Shuckers, as I had mentioned, in the exhibition game before the regular season. And then we also wound up playing there for our first postseason game, the play-in game against the Indiana Legends. We played against them in the Crossroads Community Church as well. So even though it's not the home venue we had last year, which was the Clinton CRC, it is still a venue that we're kind of familiar with. And we did have a pretty good show up. See Jason here in the chat. We did have 13 players show up to the tryout this past weekend. That is the highest attendance we have had at one of our tryouts so far. Yeah, and we did have some technical difficulties as well. See pop that up there too. Thanks again for joining us, Jason, as always. But yeah, we did have some technical issues as far as the stream goes. We were planning on streaming it. I'm remote at the point, because I'm in Florida, so I actually didn't get a chance to scout any of the players myself. So it was just the people there on site for the venue. But I think the we had the new cameras. We were getting them set up, and I believe what happened was it went up and updated because we haven't used it before. So it wound up updating so that it was able to do the streaming. And once it started doing that, tryouts were already underway, so we weren't able to get that stream going. But hopefully we'll have somebody on it either this week or in the future. If it's not this week, but somebody in the future that can give a little bit more insight on the tryouts. I'm just going off of secondhand information, so what was passed along to me from the tryouts. But yeah, we did have 13 players. I did get that passed along, which is the highest number that we have had out of any of the tryouts so far, which is definitely a positive. And we are looking again at another tryout sometime over the summer, and hopefully we can continue to grow on that if we have 13 plus going into that tryout. But again, our goal is for this year to enter the ABA season with a roster where we actually have more than enough players, and kind of trim that roster down going up to the ABA season. We mentioned we will be playing in the IBL over the summer, so we may have some guys on the team that participate throughout the summer and some of our exhibition games, kind of as like an extra tryout, and see how they kind of gel with the team going into the ABA regular season. And then once we get to the ABA season, then we're going to trim that down. And I think we'll have a pretty solid roster at that point. But we are hoping to bring back some of our key players from last year as well. So in addition to these guys who showed out at the tryouts, we did have some guys we are reaching out to from this past tryout. A few of them stood out, and we are trying to reach out to them, see if we can negotiate something with them to join the roster. And again, it might not be in a full capacity. I mean, some of them may wind up being on the ABA roster, and some of the other ones may wind up being in some of our exhibition games, kind of as the additional tryout. And it also is a really good opportunity for us this year, being involved with the IBL for the Pro-Am Summer League, to have the additional time to try out these players. Last year when we set everything up, we kind of had everything, um, running last minute, and we only had a couple of months to get the whole roster, team, coaching, venue, all that type of stuff set up. So we definitely have a lot more time going into this off season, and we are trying to fully execute everything we can before we go into the second season. But I think we should be making some announcements up in the upcoming week or so, as far as players that will be returning, and if we could get any players from the tryouts to join our team for the ABA roster. I think we'll put those announcements out this week, upcoming week as well, or at least that is the plan. But we do plan on having some of our key players back from last year. So that will be I think a kind of a key going into this second season. If we can build around that core that we had from last year. We had the fan voters fill out that form. It was like our first vote for the off season, and um, that was you filled out a form. It was like a 1 to 5 scale type of thing, for the players, which players you wanted to keep, and players that you may want to look for other options. So we took that into consideration, and the guys who had the highest scores are the ones that we are trying to retain going into this second season. But again, as much as we would love to have everybody back, it is professional sports, so it's just not going to be possible. But the guys that we do get back will be a nice announcement upcoming, hopefully for that. Um, and hopefully I can make some more graphics like that AB shirt that I had. But I think that we'll wind up launching that at some point during the off season, and maybe we could wind up doing that for some or all of the other players that we wind up retaining from last year, because I should be able to go through and find enough pictures of uh, game shots and stuff to put up some graphics like that. I do see a question here. When is the first IBL game? So we are planning, I think that is in June, like the first week of June, if I'm not mistaken, um, which would wind up being, if it is June 1st, that would be next Saturday. So I'll have to double check on that. But I think at least that was what I had initially heard was like the beginning of June. So I'm guessing next weekend may actually wind up being that first IBL game. I do know that what I was told was June was when it started. So if they are starting that in the first week of June, I believe that would be next Saturday. Could be the first game for the IBL. Um, but we'll get that updated as far as like any official times and such going into next week. We'll have announcements on that, and we'll definitely cover that on next week's podcast as well. I don't have like an official time yet for anything as far as when our first IBL game is, um, but I'm sure once that gets passed along to me, I will be working on some graphics, as well as some of our other guys will be working on some graphics and get that posted out on our social media. And we will be streaming all of those games live on the Patreon. At least that is the plan as far as I'm aware. And I think um, we may be streaming those free, but I'll have confirmation on that going into next week before we play any of the games. But I do think at least that was initially what we were planning on doing. And then once we go into the ABA season, it would jump back to the same as this, where it's like a subscription. Anybody that is any of the Patreon subscription levels would be able to stream the ABA regular season games. The IBL will be like exhibition games in a way, because we are a professional team and the IBL is a pro-am league. So they have agreed to have their regular season play out over the summer. And amongst the teams within the IBL, one team will have the opportunity to face off against the Instigators for a championship game between the Pro Am teams and the professional team, which is going to be the Instigators. And at the end of that, there will be one champion for the IBL Summer Pro Am League. But yeah, we will definitely, as far as like when I get updates on the official times and game schedule, definitely be making some graphics for that and posting that both on our social media and here on our um, weekly podcast. We'll be sharing that as well, to make sure that we have everybody updated as far as when those games are. Again, talking about that camera, I mentioned we did have a little bit of a hiccup with the first try at it, I guess. But those cameras we're really excited about. They will be a major upgrade going into our second season. They are really cool. They have the ability to shoot in 4K, so our quality of the streams should go up significantly. It also has a ton of cool features, like it cuts its own highlights. It also has like player tracking, ball tracking. It's AI driven, so we actually don't need a cameraman to run the camera this year. Again, we had Ronan, one of the other owners, shooting the camera for pretty much all the games this past year. So that opens up some more opportunities for us to expand on the game day operations, as well as the streaming going into our streams with this camera. And I think the IBL games will kind of be testing out some of the software, seeing exactly what we're able to do, and fine tune our skills with the broadcast as well as the camera. So that way, once we jump into the ABA season, we'll kind of have things hammered down for the most part. And there are like some pretty cool features like heat zones and like advanced statistics as well as from what I was told for the camera. So it'll be cool to see if we can make those kind of work on the broadcast level. But I do think we're gonna kind of play around with it and see what works and what doesn't work well on the streaming side of things with the IPL season. But we're really looking forward to those cameras. And the thing I've mentioned this in the past that I really like about it is that it cuts its own highlights. Going into the off season, I know that was something not only I but the other owners kind of brought up when we sat down and looked at what we could do to kind of increase engagement with some of our viewership, externally, like on YouTube and some of the social media platforms, was we needed some more highlight clips. And going back and trying to cut those clips from the games, it proved to be very difficult and time consuming. And with all of us working full-time jobs, it just really wasn't something we could realistically do to the level that we wanted it to be done. Um, but this is going to help out a lot with that, with the player tracking abilities as well. It's going to be easier to narrow down exact moments in which the players that we're looking to create a highlight reel for, it'll have everything grouped together already. But going off of that, our highlights on YouTube, like our YouTube Shorts, significantly higher viewership on our YouTube short videos compared to like our traditional YouTube videos that we put up. We have the podcast here, which gets a handful of views on YouTube once it gets posted. Then the live game streams, we post those like a day or so after on YouTube, and we can get about 100 or so views on the games. But the shorts, when we put those up on YouTube, we've been able to get into the thousands, tens of thousands of views, just with some of our shorts. So I think that's really going to be a key to growing our engagement. On that, especially on YouTube, but I think on all of our social media platforms, to have more professionally cut highlight reels is going to help us spread a lot on a lot of different platforms, in my opinion. But I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, so hopefully we do get that. All the technical difficulties figured out before we go into our gameplay. I think we'll be kind of troubleshooting before we get into the actual first game for the IBL. But I think we have that issue fixed. But we will again troubleshoot it again before we go live for that first game. But yeah, so the IBL again. So some of those guys from the tryouts, even if they're not going to be on the team, going into the ABA season, we may have some guys that you'll see in the IBL play as an additional tryout. Um, and it's a nice expanded opportunity for us to have a second look on some of these guys, and it also makes it so that way we don't have to have so many tryouts throughout the off season, because I mean everybody can have an off day. So if there's a guy that we're not quite sure on, and in the past we had a couple of tryouts, so we would bring them back to another tryout. But if they have an expanded opportunity, and I think a lot of the gameplay is really going to be more beneficial to see how they kind of fit within the team. They give us the expanded look on that instead of just like a short time frame to make an opinion on these players. Um, and I think that's really going to be beneficial going into our second season. But yeah, we'll have updates on that probably this week, I would think, because It's going to be June next weekend, so I think we'll have some official announcements, not only on when our games are for the IBL season, as well as times for that, and some kind of streaming information publicly shared on some of our social media platforms, as well as on here and the Patreon. We will also, I believe, have announcements out for our players and our rosters. As far as like the IBL roster, I don't know if we'll have our full ABA roster out at that point, but we may have some of our guys that will be joining us again for the ABA season and some new guys announced for that. But we should have our IBL roster out next week as well as we prepare for that. And the other big announcement we had this off season, and it connects into all these things, is our new hometown. The new place we will be playing is Fishers, Indiana. And I do see your question about the IBL. I don't remember what the I stands for, but the B and the L I do know, obviously, are basketball league. But I'll look that up and I'll figure that out for our next podcast. Um, but yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that. I know somebody did tell me that in the past. Um, but yeah, we'll be going to Fishers, Indiana. We did a little bit more of a breakdown on the new home site for the Hoosier State Instigators last weekend, um, and it is a big move in a way going into our second season. We are jumping from Clinton, Indiana. And again, thank you to Clinton for the hospitality and welcoming us in our inaugural season. We loved being in Clinton. We just came to the conclusion that as a business model, it's going to be more beneficial for us to jump to Fishers. One of the biggest reasons is honestly the difference in the population. Fishers is a pretty rapidly growing population. It seems to be one of the bigger, I guess, suburbs outside of Indianapolis. Again, I'm in Florida, so I'm going based off of stats and what I've been told from other people. But if you look at year over year, Fishers has continued to grow in their population. And from Clinton, we had about 5,000 or so for the total population, and Fishers is about 100,000 or so. Again, give or take on those numbers, but that is a huge difference at looking at potential fans for the Hoosier State Instigators, and hopefully that can help us fill out the stands a little bit more going into the second season. And the venue that we had last year, the Clinton CRC, great venue. It's kind of a historical, old school basketball feel, but we did have some issues filling up the stands because the venue was pretty large, so it could hold a few thousand people. And I think our highest total was about 150 or so. But it was, a little bit over 100, was less than 200. I do know that. But so we were in the 100 range, and in a venue that large, it made it look kind of like a little empty on some of the broadcasts. So hopefully that will help with some of that going into the second season. And also with that many more people, it does offer hopefully some more sponsorship opportunities. We had some great sponsors in the past season: SDMC, Indiana, the Adventure Beer Company, and some partnerships like with Diamond House International and Fan Controlled Sports and Entertainment. So hopefully this will also open up some more sponsorships with the increased profile of the city that we are now playing in. It's also location-wise a lot closer to some of the major cities within Indiana. Obviously, Indianapolis is the main city within Indiana, and it's the major airport there is the Indianapolis Airport. We're like less than 30 minutes away now from Indianapolis and the airport. So that also helps me when I travel. If I fly into the Indianapolis airport, I now have a much shorter travel, to the games. and I think to Clinton was like an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on traffic. So that's about an hour or so that I'll be saving in travels, or anybody that would be traveling from the airport to the venue. Um, that's a pretty that's to me that's a pretty significant amount of time to save. But it is locationally beneficial for the team as well. A lot of our guys that were on the roster last year were located or had homes closer to the Indianapolis region. So for them to travel out to Clinton, again, that's about an hour and a half or so. So that cuts down their travel time significantly. And it also helps with some of the guys, again, that like showed up to the tryout. It helps us expand our talent pool, being in an area that has a lot more population. Um, but again, we're not too close to the other teams within the area, both the Indiana Lions, who were the champions a couple of years ago, or co-champions a couple of years ago, and the Indiana Legends are also somewhat close in that area. They play in Greencastle, if I'm not mistaken, and the Lions, I believe, have a venue in Indianapolis region and Danville. But again, we had this passed by the ABA. We made sure to check with them before we made any kind of official announcement, and they agreed with us that it was a different enough area that it would not pull from either one of those. But I think it's like 20 to 30 minutes is the difference as far as travel time between our location and one of theirs. So it's definitely still far enough apart that we're not over impeding some of the other locations. But yeah, so hopefully that does increase our talent pool as well. Um, and it does also help with some of the owners. I know Corey, he does live in Fishers, so for him that cuts down the travel time to pretty much nothing. And I know Rob Ronan, he is closer to that than he is to Clinton, so that also cuts down his travel time. And those are both of the owners in Indiana. The rest of us are all spread out across the U.S. Myself in Florida. I think Jay is in St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken. And we got some guys out in the West Coast in Colorado and California as well. So, we're all kind of spread out, but we do have that home base in Indiana. So this will help with, all of our technology and getting everything set up as far as that, and cut down some of that travel time. And hopefully that does also make it so that it makes it easier this year with like practices and stuff, because our location was pretty far away to have guys travel, on weeknights, go out to practice and then drive back home. So hopefully that does help out with some of that. And we have an expanded off season with the IBL tournament, and just more time in general. We'll probably have some more exhibition games in there as well, as some a couple more tryouts hopefully. Going into this next season, we'll definitely have a lot more playing time, and hopefully that helps us gel a little bit more going into the season. We saw once we got things kind of on the same page at the second half of the first season, that we really kind of kicked it up another notch, and that's what we're looking to do going into this second season. But we're hoping to do that right off the bat and kind of cement ourselves as the one of the main teams in our region and our division. As far as I'm aware, I think we should be within the same division. I do know the ABA is looking at realignment because they have had so many new teams join. They had over 150 teams last year, and they're growing on that. I did get word that I think a couple of more teams are joining the state of Indiana, so we'll keep an eye out for any kind of announcements on that, and see where their official locations are in perspective. To our team and some of the other teams, and see if they may wind up falling within our region. Um, But I know last year we had a few teams in Indiana. We had the Ohio Kings as well, and team in Chicago and Louisville. So, a couple of different states represented within our division. Um, but I think for the most part, it should still be pretty similar to this past year. But it will depend again on how that alignment goes for some of the teams and which division they wind up falling in. I do know I saw one that was really cool, and it's a little bit closer to where I'm located. But somehow some team is going to be the Tropics. And if you ever seen Semi Pro, there's the Flint Tropics, and great movie with Will Ferrell, and Jackie Moon is the character he plays. He's an owner, coach, and the player on the Flint Tropics. But there's a team in Florida for next year that is going to be called the Florida Tropics. They have a pretty similar logo as well, um, but I don't know how they get how they will get away with it. But we'll see if when they get on the court, if they're able to keep all the stuff that they got as far as the announcements go. I think their logo was like very similar, but I think it was a basketball was like the main part of the logo. Um, but colors and font and all that was pretty much spot on to Flint Tropics. Um, but that'll be a fun team. I'll keep an eye on them. I'll try to expand some of the talent that I look at as well. Going into this second season, I kind of only focused within our division. But once we got to the championship weekend and All Star weekend, um, I'd like to have a little bit more knowledge going into that and provide some more analysis going in to next season when it comes to that time. Um, well, that's just one team that caught my eye as far as like some of the announcements for new teams for next year. But pretty much anytime they officially announce a new team, it is on the ABA website. Their official website is realabaleague.com, and yeah, pretty much anytime they make an official announcement, they'll post something about the teams that are joining the new league or joining the league as a new team for the upcoming season. And oh, that's cool. So there's also a Tropics in Topeka, Kansas. So I didn't know that one. I'll have to check that out. But I know I've been trying to expand and see some of the other teams with some cool logos and jerseys in the ABA. And with over 150 teams, it's a little bit difficult to keep track of all of them. I had mentioned in the past that one of the other teams I kept a track on this past season was the uh, Buffalo Extreme. That's what it was, Buffalo Extreme, because they had an ex-Syracuse player from when I went to college. Oh, a different league. So the Topeka Tropics are in a different league. Yeah, but yeah, there's a bunch of fun teams and stuff if throughout the country with the ABA, and I hope to expand my knowledge on that. But yeah, Fishers is going to be a big step up going into next season. I think that'll kind of set us up on another stage. And the other thing with having some of our guys local to the area is it should help with some of our, kind of like pop up local events as well. We had planned some of the children's camps in the past, so hopefully that will come to life in Fishers this season as well. Um, and I think it's going to be a little bit easier for our guys to organize, being local to the area. We did have that trunk or treat last year out in not in Fishers, in Clinton, and that was one of our best turnouts. And we gave out a bunch of candy and tickets and such, and had great turnout for our first home game as a result from that. So I think we'll be able to expand some of our fan base because we'll have a more permanent foot in that location in Fishers. But we did have a couple of other updates for this this week. as well. We had posted it over on the Patreon if you didn't get a chance to check it out already. We had posted that. So some updates on the tryouts, which we had mentioned, um, and the facility. So that was one thing that we had not announced going into our announcement for Fishers. So we made that announcement for Fishers, but it does have that venue announcement coming soon. We do not have an official venue yet that we are able to publicly announce. Um, going into our second ABA season, we do have a couple of venues that we were looking at. We've been further discussing with each of those venues, and that also played a factor into the location that we picked as well. We had a couple of ideas of what we are looking for in an ideal venue. Obviously, with how tech focused our company is with the AAC, and what we hope to do with the future of sports, and obviously our streaming. Uh, Internet and kind of like the technological ability of the venue was definitely one of the keys that we were looking for. So a place that was able to do that, have good enough connections and internet abilities to stream our games live. Again, hopefully we're doing that in 4K. So definitely have to meet those requirements. And then, there's requirements for within the league for as far as what the court has to be, so has to fit within those regulations. And also, we were looking at venues that would fit what we think fits the fan base that is going to show up to our games best as possible as well. So, you know, we want to make sure that it's an inviting environment. And, maybe that does mean cutting back on the capacity. That was something we had discussed. So that might also play into it. But as far as an optics perspective, that is going to be, I think personally that that would be a better option to have a little bit of a smaller venue. That way we can kind of grow into a venue rather than trying to fill up a venue that would be too large. So I think if we can, we've been looking at a few of the places and discussing, but once we did that, we had a few different locations. Obviously Clinton was still on the board. Then we had some other areas. I think nearby Clinton there's also Terre Haute, and some other areas within Indiana, but that's why we called ourselves the Hoosier State Instigators. It made it easier for this kind of decision. And once we narrowed it down, we looked at a few different places, and ultimately we saw that Fishers, not only as far as population and like the statistics and graphics of the area would best fit, it also had a multitude of options for our next venue. And we took that. We had four venues that we were actually looking at within the area, and we have now narrowed it down to just two. And these were the two front runners. Once we did do some more research in the area, we do have one. Again, I'm remote from the location, so I haven't been able to check out any of these in person. I'm just going based off of websites and pictures and stuff that I see, and secondhand information. But I do know there's a lot of excitement from the guys between these two venues that we have. One we know will work. We've pretty much already like figured everything out for the one. So we know for sure like it would fit our schedule. It would fit the requirements we're looking for. But there's also a really cool one that it's not officially open yet. So we have an opportunity, um, potentially to be, kind of like the face of a new facility, which would be really cool. And that is the other option we have in front of us. And our guys in the area are going to be checking the location out in person, I believe this weekend. So I'll get some more information. We'll be able to pass that along, hopefully next week. But we'll see if any kind of announcements can be made. And anytime the announcement is official, then we'll be posting that, as well as talking about it more in extent here on a podcast. Um, but yeah, so I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to that. I think that would be really cool to be kind of like the face of a new arena venue, whatever it's going to be called. And not only that, but like once we make that move, so it'll coincide with our move as well. Being new to the area, we'll also be at the new venue on the location. And we just have to make sure that everything's going to line up for that. So we do have one again set basically so that we know for sure would work. And then obviously the other side of it is the financial aspect. We've been pretty open as far as the finances with our team and the AAC in general. But again, that's also going to play a factor into the two, which one we do wind up going to decide as far as the venue that we'll wind up playing in. But it will be cool to have our guys step foot into venues and see which one fits our needs best. And the other news that we had posted earlier today was an update for the ticketing. So once we get our um, venue set, then we should hopefully soon after then be looking to set our schedule. And once we get our schedule set, then I believe we should be putting up our tickets shortly after that. And again, we'll be offering both season tickets and single game tickets. But we're going to be doing it a little bit different. So instead of it being over on our website for the AAC, which is apexofsports.com, as you see there where it says for more info, for info and sponsorship opportunities, you can visit that website. But that website, we have a bunch of information, players from the past season, as well as statistics from the past season, merchandise, jerseys, that such. But yeah, over on there, we used to have the tickets for our games. We weren't really selling a ton of tickets through our website, so we've actually decided to have that launch through another website, which is going to be Passage Sports. They're going to be our official ticket provider, and they're going to be running our tickets for our online sales. And again, that's just another step that we're trying to take to help kind of professionalize the look of the team going into the second season. That's really kind of like what one of our main keys that we've been trying to do is kind of set ourselves as a professional franchise, and I think that's going to help when we talk with potential sponsors if they can see that we have not only a season under our belt at this point, but to look at our stuff and for everything to look uh, very professional, I think is going to help as well. But again, that's going to be Passage Sports. We'll have more information like once we officially announce our tickets and such, schedule and whatnot, as far as how to go ahead and purchase that. And we'll probably have links on the site as well that would route out to that link, the direct link to buy the tickets. But I think those were the new announcements we had for this past week. And we put those up just a little bit earlier today. But again, I think we'll wind up playing next weekend, if I'm not mistaken, in the IBL, and we'll have updates on that, both schedule and roster, next or well this upcoming week. So that should uh, do that, and yeah, and we did also have we have a different route for sponsorship this year as well. So we have an advertising agency that is helping to prioritize certain sponsorships that we have available for the team. I think primarily we're going to be doing that for like the official whatever of the Hoosier State Instigators. So I think they're going to be focusing on those type of sponsorships, and we'll see how that goes. But I think that'll again, I mentioned we have a lot of owners here. Well, not a lot. We have like 6 owners, and all of us work full time. So for us to sit there and try to make all these cold calls and knocking doors, showing up to places and trying to negotiate ourselves into a sponsorship, it's kind of difficult and it's time consuming, and sometimes the times that we have available don't line up with the ideal times to be doing that stuff. So that'll help us out a lot and kind of get the ball rolling for our sponsorships in our second season. And a little bit more as far as the AAC update. I do think we will have. I have to check because I know it's a holiday this Monday, but we are planning on launching Amateur Night pretty soon. Um, I'll have to double check if it is this Monday or not because I do know it is the holiday. Um, but we will have that up soon. We are still working on that. And again, if there's anybody that would have footage that they'd be interested in sharing, you can always contact us. I think on our website we do have a way to contact us as far as like a little form you can fill out. And if not, you can always reach out to us and message us on social media. Or if you're over in the Discord, you can always tag us in the Discord and let us know that you have an idea for something that could be over on Amateur Night. But I think we're going to get that started in the pretty soon, like a pretty near future. And I think we're gonna have Corey. Corey will be running that, aka Frosty, and I think we'll be at least starting with some of his baseball games for the Penguins, the team that he plays for. But I think that we'll be launching that pretty soon, and we'll be looking to expand that. Again, that's going to be a fun venture into the world of sports, and kind of growing our market, seeing where our interest lies, not only within the owners here, but also and especially I should say within our fan base, and see which types of action and different sports activities that we could potentially look at going into in the future. Um, but that's the other continued update for the AAC. I think that is pretty much all the news we've kind of covered it in the past, but we go a little bit more in detail tonight on it. But hopefully next week again we'll have some more updates for the IBL play, what we're looking to do in that season. Um, But I think if I'm not mistaken, it'll be at the same venue, the Crossroads Community Church, as far as the game locations go. Um, but as far as the schedule and times of games, hopefully I'll have some official announcements throughout the week, and then we'll go over that next week's episode of Instigate Success, and the roster as well. The roster for our IBL play, we should have out some updates throughout the week, and we'll have that for. Before we go live for the IBL games. And again, hopefully we get that technical difficulty figured out and we can stream those games. I think that's going to be next weekend, if I'm not mistaken. But again, official word will be out next week, I think, on that, or as soon as we get an update. But again, I was initially told it was the beginning of June, which would be next Saturday. But I think that is all for tonight's episode. And we do have the holiday coming up on Monday. And, thank you for anybody who has served in the military, and especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. So celebrate Memorial Day this Monday. Um, but that is going to be all for tonight's episode. As always, thank you for joining us, and be sure to join again every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern to get all your news for the AAC and the Hoosier State Instigators. But until next time, as always, be great and instigate.